Hello again, everyone. Different day, different beanie. It's still very cold, and my driveway is no cleaner than it was on Tuesday. So I'm going to do exactly what I did for the Chapter 3 slides for Chapter 4. Chapter 4 is very short in comparison, so this shouldn't take nearly as long. But these are super useful um, aids, especially for my online students. So these recordings are kind of mostly for my face-to-face students, but I am going to include some talking points for my online folks, especially when we get to the digital video creation. So today's chapter kind of talks about two different things: the ethics of public speaking, but also how we can use technology to help in that process. We're going to look at how to use technology wisely, what ways people often misuse technology, or just don't know that there's a better way to use it. So hopefully, like I said, for the online folks, hopefully that's useful. And I'd already made that video explaining framing, but some of that, so a little bit of that will be refresher from that. But this will go into stuff like lighting and stuff as well. Okay, so starting off with ethics. Why do we need ethics in public speaking? Well, if we go way back to Athens once again, Aristotle, he's thinking up all these cool things. He's got that ethos, pathos, logos idea rolling around in his head, and part of that is because of these people called sophists, which not I don't want to say they're unlike modern day teachers. They had groups of students, classes of students. They charged money for their skills training, if that's what you want to call it. But they didn't care about ethics. They cared about the art of winning an argument or beating an opponent's argument. So they focus on winning at all costs rather than having ethics and credibility. So, and then Aristotle comes around and he's like, this isn't how we should be doing it. We should also have credibility in our speaking because a credible person lends to a better, a more honest, more truthful, more believable speech. So speakers have to be ethical, but there's also an ethics side of the listeners, and we'll kind of look at some of those later. Excuse me. It's the job of the speaker to present carefully researched information, and we will talk ad nauseum about what makes a good source, what makes a bad source. Um, Essentially, for the purpose of this class, I think it would be great if all of your sources were books or newspaper articles or things like that. But I understand it's 2026 and it's a lot easier to just Google things. But Google and just the internet in general, there's a lot of junk on the internet. So we'll, in a later class period, we will learn a lot more about how to find appropriate sources. But that's ultimately the speaker's job, is to find credible research. Presenting only truthful information, and that also means presenting the whole picture of the information. So we'll look at kind of what distortion and exaggeration means in the context of giving speeches. And then at any point, if you have something that a talking point about your speech or a sub point that you didn't come up with, or some kind of data, fact, or statistic, or number, or graph, or anything like that, that has to be, you have to give credit for those ideas. And in a, if you were writing a paper, that would be called a citation. In a speech, it's called an oral citation because you're giving that citation orally. So and we'll talk a lot more about that when we get to that point. So this is a very tiny chart. I'm sure it's easier for you to see, but in my recording software here, it's about a 2-inch by 2-inch square. So I'm going to try to use previous exposure to this to explain what this is saying. So basically, we have different views and opinions on ethical standards of professions, and it can kind of be boiled down to if there's money involved. If you're giving people money, you tend to hope that they're to a higher ethical standard than people that are um, trying to sell you something. So, for example, nurses, doctors, dentists, those kind of folks. Um, you're paying for a service rather than maybe a good that's trying to be uh, sold to you. So, for example, dentist work, we all need that. So that's something that we place high ethical standard or the expectation of high ethical standards on versus I think the bottom one is a car salesperson. Um, there is this stigma kind of surrounding car salesmen and car lots, right? The first thing they want to do when you get there is run their credit score and see, uh, how much money you got, how much are you looking at putting down. So there's because they're working on commission rather than salary or wages, and there is a little bit the level of their ethical or their ethics or their credibility is kind of in question. Um, so yeah, I'll let you guys look at this because I can barely see this on my screen. But essentially, if it's a person doing a service for you, then you view their ethical standards higher, or that society places higher ethical standards on them. So doctors, nurses, and such, you can't do that job without a degree. You can't do it without licensing. Your facility can't do it without certifications and things like that. So whereas anybody could be, an entrepreneur or uh, a salesman, right? So just something to think about. So what are some examples or the costs of unethical behavior? Your textbook has three pretty good examples, pretty different types of plagiarism happening. So in the first case, someone had plagiarized their entire thesis or dissertation. Essentially, when you are in a graduate program, you will have to, or especially a PhD program or doctorate program, you'll have to defend your work, your thesis, this big project that you work on, and then you'll have to defend that against a group of judges or a board or something like that. Um, a thesis or dissertation is the culmination of your entire time in your program. So to plagiarize that, to steal that from somewhere else, to fake it and try to pass it off as your own, that's a big no-no. What that could result in, if you go to, you sign up, you go to a grad program, and then you try to pull that off, and then you get found out. Well, you've thrown all your scholarship and grant money out the window. You've thrown, maybe you've accrued massive amounts of student loan debt that you now have nothing to show for it because you can't get a degree. That stain of, well, this person is untrustworthy, they are dishonest. Um, so that's a huge problem. On a smaller scale, a law student giving a plagiarized commencement speech. Does this have, legally, does that, do they have any kind of repercussions for that? Not really. A speech is a speech, right? Like he easily could have said, uh, I'm going to borrow parts from a speech from someone else who I thought gave a really good speech or something, giving credit where credit's due. But that has the societal repercussion where, maybe this person didn't cheat on their exams or they didn't cheat on their dissertation or anything like that, but they're willing to take shortcuts and lie and pass something off as their own. So socially, you kind of get that black stain on your reputation. And then the third case, CEO of Yahoo resigning after essentially he put more than one degree on his resume, and he didn't actually have one of those degrees. So I think trying to pass off a degree that you don't have, that's harder than other ways that people maybe lie on their resumes, right? Saying that they're proficient in Microsoft Office or Excel or spreadsheet or Access or anything like that. Um, that could be, the problem might be there is you get hired and the person who hired you, like, they really need someone who knows how to use Excel. And then so they're just dumping Excel work on you. And you're like, well, I've never used Excel, don't know what I'm doing. That could be very problematic. So just don't lie on your resumes, folks. Okay, so plagiarism is kind of a big umbrella term that has a bunch of stuff under it. Um, Exaggeration and distortion are technically types of plagiarism, but not necessarily to the extent of just taking someone else's work. So, exaggerating, I think we all kind of know what that word means, but in the context of giving speeches, it's overstating information that's maybe not as important as you're making it out to be. Uh, so, a lot of times, if you're giving a speech and you're talking about percentages, 25% of all students suffer from mental illness. Uh, if it's not 25%, if it's actually 18%, but you're rounding up to make it sound better, that's problematic. Presenting facts is more important than they are, so maybe it is 25%, but maybe for the last 30 years it was 35%. So actually now it's on a decline. So still presenting that as this big issue that might not be good. And then distortion, misrepresenting or twisting the facts. So similarly, saying that 25% is a huge problem when in fact it's actually it's been on the decline. Misrepresenting or twisting facts, using uncredible research. So maybe you say something like, John Smith in his 2018 study found that 80% of students have mental health conditions, when in reality it's like maybe that particular article was debunked or misproven, or maybe it was a legitimate study, but the sample size was, maybe he only asked 10 students. Maybe it was a qualitative survey versus a quantitative survey. So there's plenty of ways to distort the information that you're receiving, or asking, if you were doing some kind of survey, asking like closed-ended questions where the question is setting up an answer for the person that you're interviewing. So there's a lot of ways to distort information. And then plagiarism, like I said, kind of included in all of these. You don't want to do any of these things, but plagiarism at a micro level is simply just taking someone else's stuff and using it as your own. So that could be one for one stealing someone's speech. That could be citing a statistic or a graph or a percentage or something and not saying where you got that information. So that's super problematic. It's becoming more of a problem now because of AI, right? So if you just asked Copilot or ChatGPT or someone for some sources, they might give you some things that they're a machine. They can't read the whole thing and understand the entire context. And that's another type of plagiarism, which is paraphrasing plagiarism, where maybe you need something to make your point and your argument. You need to find some stat that says something about the percentage of mental health in college students, and you just find the first article that jumps out at you, and you say, well, John Smith in his article said that 25% of students have mental health conditions, when in reality his research was maybe about something completely different, and you just saw that little snippet of information. So definitely when you find credible sources, you want to read through those sources to make sure that you're understanding their work appropriately. And like I said, the internet's got some problems. It's much faster, certainly, than going to your old brick and mortar library and finding a book. I would highly recommend doing that, just because if it's a book or a journal or a newspaper or a magazine that you're pulling from the school library, or any school library for that matter, those are just automatically credible. School libraries specifically, don't just take any old book or any old article. So um, all of those, anything you can find in your library is fair game. But realistically, I think most of you are going to use the internet for most of your sources. And like I said, we'll talk about that a lot more later. But there's a lot of pitfalls with finding information on the internet, especially with Google. So Google, if you aren't aware, uh, companies can pay Google to put their website URLs or their links to their websites at the top of search queries, if it pertains anything like that. So uh, it's tax season. If any of you have jobs and you're trying to get your taxes done, if you type in anything at all about taxes into a Google search, the first couple sources you're going to find, it's going to be TurboTax, H&R Block. You're going to be getting all of these sponsored uh, companies, and so part of that is because Google is great for digital traffic to sell stuff. So any kind of .com domain, uh, that's usually a place that's either trying to sell you something or it's trying to tell you something while also exposing you to a million ads. So if you've ever tried to find, a recipe for baked spaghetti, let's say, uh, to get to the recipe, you got to scroll for 900 years just to get to the ingredients, and then you got to keep scrolling to figure out. And that's because that website has sold ad space on its website to expose you to those ads. So Google, bare bones Google, meaning the regular old Google, Google.com, it I would say is not the best place, the jumping off point for certain, but it's not. I would not find your sources just from a basic Google search, and we'll talk more about what Google Scholar is, which is a completely different search engine. Um, but yeah, so the internet's really useful, but it also has some problems. The other thing too, I've heard a lot of speeches, so I and I pick all your topics ahead of time, so even the topics that you can give speeches about, I've heard that information before. So if you're, pulling some weird statistic like 110% of students have mental health, like obviously that's not real. That's not a real percentage. So if it doesn't sound right, it's probably not right. Okay, so what do ethics look like for the speaker? What do they look like for the audience? So let's start with the speaker, and this doesn't matter as much for the online students, but it's still important to know. It's important to show up when you're scheduled to speak, and we'll talk about speech schedules at a later point. But if you know you're going to go on a Tuesday, or you know that you have to be ready to go on a Tuesday, and then you're interestingly sick that Tuesday, and then you're sick that next Thursday, and then you're sick that next Tuesday, um, maybe at a certain point I start asking, is this person actually sick? So showing up when scheduled to speak, super important. And maybe I'll talk about speakers and audience for a second. When you're showing up to a speech or a speech day, like we got to get through speeches, so we're gonna start at 10 o'clock, or we're gonna start at 11:30. So if you show up to class 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour late, you want to make sure that nobody is actively giving a speech before you enter the room, because that's horribly distracting to the people giving the speeches. Um, it's also distracting to people trying to listen to the speech. So if you show up on a speech day, if you show up late, you want to just make sure if nobody's giving a speech, you can come on in. If someone's actively giving a speech, you want to wait. We will all clap when they're done. When you hear the clapping, then you can come in. Similarly, if you're there on a speech day and you have to go out for the bathroom or whatever, then the same kind of rules would apply. Uh, Show respect by being prepared. So as a speaker, it's really bad if you have your flash drive. You've got your PowerPoint on your flash drive, but then it's the day that you're going to give your speech, and you forgot your flash drive at home, or you forgot your note cards at home. So being prepared as a speaker is super important. Respecting the audience opinions, that won't matter too much because we don't have a Q&A type session. But when you get to your persuasive speeches, you still want to be aware that there are people in the audience that are going to have different opinions than you. So when you're crafting the speech, you want to keep that in mind. Being honest, no plagiarism, exaggeration, distortion of the facts or visuals, and citing your sources. So oral citations in both your informative and your persuasive speech are worth 24 points out of 100. So nearly a fourth of your speech grade is oral citations. So you could give me a perfect, beautiful speech, but if it doesn't have any oral citations, then you cannot earn anything higher than a 76. And that's before I even go in and look at, where were you on time? Did you make eye contact? Did you have your note cards written down? Stuff like that. So a big chunk of the grade is oral citations. Doing the research and citing those findings, that's really what separates what we're doing in this academic setting at academic level speeches. It separates an academic level speech from just a conversation. And so that's why it's a huge part of your grade. Limiting the use of internet sources. Again, I'm not going to get on you if all 3 or all 5 of your sources are internet based. I would love it if you had a book or some kind of text from a library or magazine or a journal publication. But like journals, for example, we're going to look at Google Scholar a lot. Those journals are digital, but they all are also, some of them, not all of them, printed physically. And if you had a physical copy of the same digital journal, like the citation would be the same for both of those. So it doesn't, in terms of research journals, it doesn't really matter to me if you have the physical version or the digital version. And then carefully researching all sides of the topic. That will matter much more when we get to the persuasive topic. Then on the audience side, supporting the speaker, no homework or daydreaming. If you're in class and you're in this, let's say you're in the first row or you're in the second row and you've got your laptop opened up and you're doing geometry homework and somebody behind you they're in the same class, they also have geometry homework. That's going to remind them, oh, I've got to do my geometry homework now. They've opened up their laptop and they're doing it. Or you're on Amazon and you're looking to buy the biggest, newest Stanley Cup. And somebody behind you's like, oh, I'd also like a new Stanley Cup. So now they've pulled their phone out and so being in the audience and doing stuff, if it's on your phone or on your laptop or even writing notes, if it's obvious that you're doing notes for, if you've got a textbook open and a ruler and a graphing paper and you're clearly doing, math homework, then that is distracting not only to the audience or to the speaker, but to anybody else in the audience who might be paying more attention to you than they are to the actual speech. We've already talked about being on time, super respectful. Respecting the opinions, again, that will matter the most in the persuasive speeches. But yeah, you're going to hear some people that have different opinions than you. It is respectful and it's ethical to give them that space. Just like you're going to have opinions that are maybe different from others in the classroom as well. nothing should be taken offensively. In terms of grading, it's really hard to even have offensive language without. It's hard to have offensive language and also do ethical research for this speech. Like, if I get any speeches like that, like they will be graded accordingly. But I have yet to. I've been doing this for a few years now, and I have yet to have a speech that's just like blatantly offensive, which is good. I guess it means I'm doing my job well. Um, but yeah, as an audience member and as a speaker, just not having not in the, especially when we get to persuasive speeches, not having the goal in mind to maybe like make fun of or aggravate the opposition. That's super important. And then we don't have Q&As for our speeches, but there will be a peer assessment, and I think this is a super useful opportunity to give a peer, meaning a fellow student, actual feedback on their speech. So, I might be taking these up and grading these, but if you don't take those peer assessments seriously, if you're just like, yeah, they did great, 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10, then if there is an area where they need to improve or they have a shortcoming, then they're not going to know that because you're not telling them. I can tell you have a shortcoming or you need to improve on something until I'm blue in the face. It matters a little bit more if someone who's in that same boat, who's taking the same class, can say, hey, by the way, you did great visuals, great pacing and stuff, but you did look down. Yeah, you didn't make enough eye contact. I wish you would have made more eye contact with the audience. That uh, constructive criticism from a peer means a little bit. It impacts students a little bit differently than teacher to student criticism. So you have the ethical responsibility to be honest in your feedback with each other. Okay, so moving on to the technology aspect. I know this chapter is kind of confusing. It's combining two completely different things. So this goes for making videos. Even though the physical folks, like, you're not really doing this in the classroom, you might in the future. You might have to have a job interview where you use Zoom or Teams. You might have to make video content for an employer. Who knows where your life will take you? So these are still useful skills. For the folks on the online version, I think you'll benefit from this a little bit more. So the audience analysis skills, that's super important. Because you have to have a physical audience, most of the times those are people that you know, so there's a little bit of familiarity there. But you want to know the audience that you're talking to, and there's a whole chapter about audience analysis. We'll talk about that a lot more later. But just knowing who you're talking to and how you can best talk to them is important. Same thing with attention grabbing skills, organizational skills. We'll talk about all of these a little bit later. So and I've talked about framing already. You can go back and watch that video. But for the physical folks, you want to have, this is where my face is a pretty good example. You want to be able to see a little bit above the top of the head, and you want to see a little bit below the chin. So if you had like a button-up shirt, maybe the second button up. You want to be in the center of the frame, but you don't want to take up, like, this is too close, but this is way too far away. So you really want to take up, about this much space. For lighting, I have a light right now. So when the textbook and this says keep a light source behind you, in most cases, that does not mean I don't have an overhead, but if I had an overhead light right here, that would not mean put that in the frame behind me, because then that glares right into the camera, and it makes it hard for your audience. That also would cover your face in shadow for the most part. So it's not saying put a literal light behind you and point it at the camera. It just means have whatever the thing is behind you illuminated with light. So the light needs to be hitting that thing behind you. And what that does is it doesn't wash your face out too brightly. So as you can see, this side of my face is so much brighter than this side, and that's because that light is pretty close to my face. Obviously, I can't rearrange my living room super easy. But if I was in a job interview or something, maybe I would move that a little bit further back. Tripods, I think that's less important than just having the camera level with your eyes. So here, I've got the camera, it's about right at my eye level. So when I'm looking at the camera, my eyes are still roughly in the center of the screen, and I can look at the camera. It's also important when you're making video content, whether that's recording it or doing live stuff like job interviews or things like that. It's much more important in job interviews, is to make eye contact with the camera. So I know I'm guilty of personally looking down at myself. I look at myself just to make sure that I look right, or that my lighting looks right, or that my camera's still working. If I was in a Zoom call, there'd be a face taking up most of my screen. If I looked at the face in the screen, then on their end, I'm not making eye contact with them. So we're still trying to simulate a real world interaction. So in order to do that, you have to look at the camera. So I know that's maybe a skill that I know I need to personally work on that. And then you want to keep it horizontal. So eye level and horizontal is important. I don't really have a way to illustrate this, but if you had your phone, let's say, and you're taking your video like this, not only is that not a flattering angle for your face, but that's not super professional. So, in how you would translate that to a computer is you would just make sure that computer is eye level, at the same level with your head. You also don't want it way up here pointing down at you. And then making sure that you have a good microphone. So a few videos I get, at least one every semester, it just won't have audio. And that's because whoever recorded the video didn't listen back to it to make sure they had audio. And that's kind of a tip. I think it's maybe on the next slide. We'll just skip that. So yeah, you're gonna have to, and this is all stuff that I kind of just talked about. But if you're doing a recording, which all of you on the online classes will be doing recordings, you have the immense magical power of being able to take numerous shots to get the right shot. Now, obviously, I understand you have audiences for two of your speeches. You can't be like, hey, 3 people that I've gathered together, can you hang out for 5 hours while I get the perfect shot? But you could certainly, if you have a 6-minute speech, you could certainly go through 2 or 3. On your personal introduction speeches and the ones where you don't have to have an audience, please, by all means, take more than one take. Like, the physical folks don't have that luxury. They only get one take. They get up in front of the class, they do it. Your digital folks, you can go again. So be prepared to edit or to retake videos. And for interview advice, you want to prepare just like you would for any other job or any other face-to-face interview. So you'd still want to look the part, sound the part, act the part, and then background noise. I wish I had my other PowerPoint because it has, I think, a better example of this. But you want to have either neutral or blank background. So in my background here, not a lot going on. I've got stairs, I've got a lamp, I've got some pictures on the wall. Not a whole lot back there that's super distracting. Um, a blank wall is ideal, but obviously not a whole lot of us just have a completely blank wall in their house. What you don't want is to have a window or something in the background, because if someone starts playing soccer or passing the football outside, that's distracting to the people trying to watch the interview. So you want to have complete control over the things that are happening in the background as much as possible. Just like any other job interview, you want to prepare for questions, and that can just be simply Googling top 10 interview questions, and then run yourself through those questions so that you can answer them more efficiently in the interview. Technology, and this goes hand in hand with the online students as well. You want to familiarize yourself with that technology before the time comes that you need to use it. So, and this is very crucial for interviews. So let's say you've used Microsoft Teams a lot, or maybe you've used Microsoft Teams exclusively for your video call needs, and then you find out that you have a job interview on Zoom, and so you just assume, it's probably not that different. And then you get on Zoom and you have no idea how to interact with it. You don't know how to unmute yourself. You don't know how to share your screen. You don't know how to, do picture in picture. So you want to be extremely familiar with that software before you need to use it. Um, Video clips, like I said, you're trying to make an impression. You want to plan ahead to set aside time for editing, to be able to do those on multiple takes. And vlogs, we're not really going to do much with vlogs, so you can just skip right over that. So that's that, ethics and technology. For the face-to-face folks, I'll put up more stuff on Canvas to explain what your assignments are in relation to these things. And for the online folks, I mean, you've already got. Right now you're in week 3, so you don't even have to. If you've watched this now, good for you. You're ahead of the game, but you won't have to worry about this until next week. So yeah, hopefully by Tuesday, my driveway won't be a solid sheet of ice, and then I can get back to giving you your regularly scheduled class content. So anyway, stay warm out there. Thank you.